Do you wish you had more time and more money to be spending with your friends and family or traveling? You ever think about how much time and money you spend on that big house? I'm Katie Clancy, Chief House Hawker at the Cape House at William Ravis. And this episode, I took some time with my friend Jane Bourette, who is the owner of Coast to Coast Financial here on Cape Cod and Nantucket. And we talked about downsizing and leveling up at the same time. And I'll tell you what, I have not looked at downsizing the same since this conversation. Like, I can't wait. I'm like, sell the house. Let's get a little house. She has got it all planned out. So I am so excited because today I am here with my friend Jane Bourette, who knows a lot about a lot of things. But today we're bringing her here because Jane is, well, we've known each other for a very long time, but specifically I chose Jane because she is the owner of Coast to Coast Financial Planning, based on the Cape and Nantucket. And she and I overlap a lot in the way we take care of people. And we both have seen a lot of what this show is about, which is downsizing, right, Jane?
Very true. Or wanting to downsize.
Wanting to downsize. We're hoping by the end of this show that you will come away knowing, first of all, what it really means, why it's important, what happens when you don't, what happens when you do, what can happen when you do, and then some like, well, all right, great, you sold me, how do I get this done? And so you will know all of that before we are done, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, so Jane, let's first talk about what happens, some of the unfortunate circumstances we have come across when people who have dragged their feet about downsizing. Because listen, it seems like a really, like we're joking about downsizing doesn't have to be a downer. It's a real, because you're talking about, life moving on and people are like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. And they don't talk about it and they avoid it and they put it off and some bad things can happen. So Jane, what have you seen?
Well, I mean, before I get into the bad things that happen, I guess what I'd like to say is it's one of the things I talk to in my business. I deal with people who are either approaching or at the retirement years, which is 59 and a half and over. And I say that because that's when you can tap into retirement accounts. But some people are still working, some people are winding down. But as you get older, a lot of people are looking to decrease their expenses, or they should be, decrease their expenses, increase their income, make sure they have a long-term care plan in place, an estate plan in place, and they want to enjoy life more, their family, their grandchildren, their friends, travel, I mean, whatever the case may be. And one of the first things I talk to people about is, what are your plans for your home? Do you plan to live there the rest of your life? Do you want to live there the rest of your life? Can you live there the rest of your life? And we go through all the scenarios, but sadly, a lot of people don't want to talk about that or face that, and till it's too late, until they're at a point where they have a health issue, they have a financial issue, but more often than not, it's a health issue. And quite often a person will wait, I'll put it off, I'll get to it, yeah, someday. And then there's a health issue and they don't have the setup to stay home, be cared for, or be able to afford to stay home and be cared for. And I've seen this way too often, but I've also seen people take the steps to avoid that.
Absolutely. So as everybody, my audience knows, I sell houses for a living. I sell houses on Cape Cod, and Cape Cod, Barnstable County is the third oldest county in the country. So a lot of people come here to retire. And so I am often working with people who are downsizing from bigger family homes or bigger second homes that they've come and retired to and whatnot. And some of the rough situations that I have come across are people who have just hung on to the big house for too long. They're like, oh, the kids aren't coming there for Christmas anymore. They have their families have grown so much, and it's not it's just not the house that it used to be. It doesn't serve the same purpose that it used to. And it's sad. It hurts their hearts to acknowledge that, but they hang on too long. And these big houses have big maintenance costs. Expenses. And they often, a lot of times, so I'll sell a house to someone down here who is just at retirement age. And they're like, I love to garden. So we get them a house with a great garden. Well, 15, 20 years down the line, that great garden is a burden. It's something that used to bring you so much joy, now brings you frustration, sadness, expense. You've got to start to think about that. And if they don't, they end up with these houses that are just not looking their best. And they're harder to sell when you've let them go. We get to home inspection. We found out there's all sorts of problems just from what we call deferred maintenance. You don't want that situation. And the other situation that's even sadder, I think, is worse, is when I'm approached by a family who's just lost their parent, typically, in a house, and the house might be big or small, but the end of the day, they never planned for the ultimate death. Nobody, even I'm like, death, like I can't even say death. It happens, and they don't.
Katie, yeah, I have a few things to say about that too. Yeah, and that's really hard because, as you said a little earlier, the children are all over the country, all over the world. And first of all, if they haven't done proper estate planning, that house may end up in probate, which is another matter, right? And as you know, then you have a personal representative has to be assigned, and it can drag out. And it can cost you a lot, cost the family a lot in court fees and lawyers and taxes. And
this is all while they're trying to plan a funeral, by the way.
Right. Well, they're grieving. And that's the last thing a grieving family needs to worry about, is a big honking old house that has a lot of expenses tied to it. And, it's a gift to your loved ones, whether you have children or relatives or friends or a nonprofit you're passionate about, to have all that in order while you're healthy, while you're a little younger or healthy or in a good position, just in case you haven't downsized yet. So yeah, all of this is tied in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had that probate experience where, it has gone on forever. We don't know when it's going to stop. Also, we've got, not everybody has kids, but I often do come across families with kids, and they're far flung. And in some cases, they haven't talked to each other in a long time about anything, much less what are we going to do with this house. And there's conflict and all that. It's just like, pay me now, pay me later. You have those conversations early, and you can save yourself and your loved ones so much trouble and money too. I love when I was talking, before you speak, I have to say something, because when you and I prepped for this call, you said something that really made me excited about downsizing and making my own estate plan. And you just said it a little bit in the earlier, but it's like, it's not like, oh, I got to plan for when I can't do my garden. No, you're planning for the fun times. I don't want to think about the garden. You do the garden. I will have pots on my deck. That's all I need to worry about, because I'm traveling, or I'm going to lunch every day. I can't be back here watering stuff. I don't want to worry about that. You sold getting older as super fun. And I'm
I have some great stories about when it does work to downsize.
Tell I want to hear the happy stories.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you a few. My own mother, she had a big house in Boston, and she was going up and downstairs a lot to get to her unit. And my sister and I said, we think you ought to look into some over 55 communities. And she was a very social person. So through a friend of a friend, we had her go tour some places, and she found this wonderful place in Newton, LaSalle Village, on a college campus, vibrant community, and some beautiful apartments. They had a lot of activities going on. And she was like, I'm not ready yet. And we're like, Mom, just get on the list. Let's start downsizing your stuff and get on the list. And so we did. And within the year, her name came up, and she was hesitant. And this is a message to the children of older people as well. And we said, you know what, let's just take the unit that's available. And if it's not ideal, you can move up later. And we kind of pushed her a little. We hired someone to help. We sold, donated, gifted a lot of her things. Someone helped her figure out what to take. She moved in, and within 24 hours, There were invitations under her door for dinner, lunch, let's go to the movies. And she had an incredible time. And she said, why didn't I do this 5 years ago? She lived 2-3 years of joy. Sadly, she passed away after that too soon. But, her last couple of years were filled with joy. And when she passed and we were grieving a sudden loss, it was very easy to, go through the apartment versus the house and celebrate her life without all the drama of the home.
Yeah. Exactly. And like I want to go out with a bang. I want to live like your mom. Like I want and just relax and go do the things that you love. And yeah, you know what? It takes a little bit of angst and some difficult conversations on the front end, but boy, does it pay off.
And we have resources. If the kids don't live anywhere nearby or you don't have enough friends to help, between us, we have lots of resources.
Absolutely. To help you like unpack, like take your house apart, get rid of your stuff and manage it in like little bites. Like this is a scenario that is just so common all over the Cape that there's tons of resources to help you. You had another story, I think.
I do. And it's a story that brought us together recently.
Yeah.
Right? Well, I have two more stories. I have a client in Colorado. This is a happy story. A client in Colorado that came back. They had moved from Cape Cod to Colorado about 10, 15 years ago to be near their kids. And they came in for a review after they came back to the Cape and said, hey, we want to travel more. And this house is costing us a lot of money and we're tired of mowing the lawn. So we had the downsizing conversation. I told them, go explore your options. And within, I'd say 6 months, they came back with two options. One ended up being this vibrant over 55 community, independent living, which had other options should they need them, attached to a mall. And they said, this is fun. So they went into that situation. They invested the money they made from selling their home. They started traveling more. Their kids were thrilled. And then the pandemic hit and they said, wow, thank goodness we have a community to be around and be with in a safe way. We could go walking through the mall. The stores were closed, but we could stay inside during that bad weather and still exercise. And they're very, very happy to this day. But the sad, bittersweet story is a client that came to us years ago and we got them into retirement. We got them a long-term care policy. We, got them so they could travel, and they did for 10 wonderful years. And then the husband died very suddenly and unexpectedly. And when the wife came in with her daughter and son-in-law, we talked about, spend a year grieving and getting through things and figuring things out. But the house is huge and you don't have a first floor bedroom. You really should think about downsizing. And she was on board and not sure where to go, but they started exploring. And they put it off. A year later, she fell down the stairs. She had a stroke, fell down the stairs, and now she's going into a facility. And bittersweet, she has a long-term care policy to help pay for it. And the house is being sold thanks to you, Katie. A lot of work had to be done in that process, but they will have the funds to help take care of her, and she'll be in a facility close to them. But we probably should have pushed her to move a little sooner on that one.
Yeah, and it's so true. Nobody ever thinks the bad thing is going to happen to them, but if you plan for it, you don't have to worry about it. And taking that worry off of your shoulders is some of the best time and money that you can spend on this kind of stuff. So
let's talk about how.
So I think I was just going to get to that. I think a lot of people just think that, well, I have a will. And the house will be fine. The kids will get it. Are you kidding me? I don't want that.
A will doesn't keep it out of probate.
Yeah, exactly. So people think that's all you need. I remember when my husband and I got married, we're like, well, now we need to go get ourselves a will. And we realized that you need more than that. And we do have an estate plan, but it's old and we have to go get it. I should probably bring it to you actually, because
that's where the attorneys.
That's the attorney. That's right.
Ooh, and we have estate attorneys. Yeah,
and I'm going to want you to talk when you start talking about how we do this. Please make sure you help me understand the difference between what an estate attorney does and what your financial estate planner does. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how we get started?
Yeah. Thank you, Katie. There are a lot of attorneys out there, and people think they can just go to their real estate attorney or their probate attorney or their criminal, their
it's
friend's
like going to a podiatrist to deliver your baby. Like,
right.
There's all different flavors of attorneys.
There is. And estate planning, I did a workshop not long ago with a gal out of Osterville. There are some very good estate attorneys on Cape Cod, the islands, and everywhere. But an estate attorney is up to date on the laws of estate planning, and they change constantly. There's language that's very important. And depending on your assets, the amounts, the types, your family dynamics, it's really important to have a good comprehensive estate plan in place so that, God forbid, something happens to you when least expected. I mean, you and I could get hit by a car tomorrow. The bottom line is you don't want your heirs to be, have everything stuck in court, stuck with lawyers you don't know, assigning people you don't know to manage your estate. So basically, you need to have an estate plan updated, and it should be looked at every 3 to 5 years because there are a lot of other documents like power of attorneys and personal representatives that have language that changes as well. So I'll just throw that caveat in there.
Yeah, sorry. So first stop is an estate attorney.
Right.
Okay. All right. And you and I both have lots of people that we work with, and we'll get some links that we will include in the comments of some of the people that we've worked with locally on the Cape and Islands that we've seen do great things for our clients. All right. So once we've talked to our an estate attorney, what do we get? What do we do when we go there? Say, hey, I want to plan for the future. What happens?
Well, that's when they put together the package. The will basically just assigns the representative and talks about your cars and jewelry, and if you have minor children and that sort of thing. There'll be a healthcare. They call them, the healthcare proxies. There's lots of names for them now. Health directive, who's in charge of your healthcare decisions if you're incapacitated. The personal representative that is in charge of your estate and making decisions. Power of attorney can access your financial accounts. And by the way, a lot of banks don't look at them if they're over 3 years old. So it's real important those are kept up to date. And often a trust. A trust can dictate what you want done with any asset, and you can be particular, because you don't want, if your children are married to someone or they're a spendthrift or they get divorced or somebody's in an accident and being sued, you don't want your hard-earned assets, your home and your accounts to be at the mercy of those sort of things. So often a trust will be put in place by an attorney.
Okay.
No, everyone's different. That's
that's good. So those are the big chunks that, basically you're going to go and have all of those things planned. And it's, you have to think about like, I really don't like my son-in-law or whatever. And you're like, well, you know what? Now's the time to say it. It's like, it is what it is. You gotta make those plans now. So we've gone to the attorney, we have that plan, and now we call you.
Oh, well, yeah, you definitely are going to be talking to either me or your own personal financial planner about.
Oh, no, everybody on this show is going to be calling you. That's how that's going to go.
I wish. But no, it's very important to make sure you have a plan. And more often than not, one of the first things, like I said earlier, is talk about the home and whether you intend to or you can stay in that home or not. And if you're going to downsize, how are you going to do that? And that's where partnership with a good realtor like you, Katie, those discussions can be had on how to downsize and where to downsize. Will it be local? Will it be somewhere else? Will it be a smaller home, townhouse, condo, independent living, whatnot? And how are you going to pay for that, especially in this market? I'll let you talk about that one.
Yeah. So in this market, as we're in this, crazy post-pandemic market, downsizing happens no matter what the market is going on, because that's biology. It's just like time keeps marching on. And if you're getting to a certain age, we're like, yeah, we were saying we were going to do that right about now. You still have to do it. So it's a little tricky right now in this market where prices are so high. So it's great. You want to sell your house and downsize. You're going to get so much money for that house right now. It couldn't be better time to do that. But we have this little issue you have to consider, which is the house or property that you want to buy next is probably inflated as well. So we had to figure that you're going to pay more. But listen, downsizing in an up market is the best way to do it. But you've got to figure out if you have the assets to do that. In a calmer market, you might be able to make an offer on a property that is contingent on the sale of the property that you're in right now. And that's the ideal situation. So you have time to get it sold, and then you take your proceeds to the closing of the next house. My ideal situation, and this is another reason to plan ahead financially, is I really like to see people do as much of this on their own terms as possible. So what I'd like to see people do is go buy the next place first. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to have, $500,000 in the bank to buy that place. There are lots of, I will introduce you to financial planners, but I'll also introduce you to lenders who can talk to you about how you can use your assets. And actually, we can get the whole team together, get Jane in the room at the same time, because so one of the things that's harder with people who are on fixed incomes is it looks like you only make like a tiny bit of money because your income actually is small, but you've got these huge assets. Well, if you start drawing on some of those assets regularly, and some financial institutions will recognize that as income, and you will qualify for even a short-term mortgage that will get you the new place before you have to sell the old place. In some cases, you only have to pay interest on the two mortgages at that time, which is great, which is a tiny payment. And oftentimes it's only a month or so that you even have to do that. And then the proceeds from the sale can go in, pay off the house that you just bought. You don't need to carry that mortgage, although money's pretty cheap right now. And depending on what your financial advisor says, you can decide what you want to do. But that's another reason to have like your ducks in a row and go have that financial plan. Even listen, all this stuff is uncomfortable to talk about. You're going to have to talk about your credit score. You're going to have to talk about your spending habits, what your car payment is. If you have a mortgage, maybe you refinanced and maybe it wasn't the smartest thing. It is what it is. Okay. But we cannot wait till you feel better about talking about it, because time keeps ticking. And if you want to have fun, and you have earned the right to go have some fun in your life and really chill out, it might require just a little hunkering down, couple of months of like getting that credit score up or paying something down. But you can do it if you just address it. So that's I'd like to see people be able to buy first, which is ideal, because then you can move on your own timeline. No one's pressuring you to get out of the house. You don't have to be in the house while it's being sold, which can be a little bit emotional and also just darn inconvenient, frankly.
Oh yeah.
But if that's not a possibility and you're like, yeah, no, I'm not in the position to do that, you can also rent for a little while.
Just going to say that.
You're going to say that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know people doing that right now. I mean, because of the market, they're like not even sure what they want to go into yet. They have an idea, but they're not, the market has dictated that they're going to have to either rent or maybe live with a relative. But typically they get a year's lease, take your time, figure out where you want to be, what you want to buy, and when it comes along, if you have to break the lease to get it, you do it.
That is exactly what I am doing with clients right now. We had this conversation with the lender. We determined it wasn't good, feasible to buy first. Right now, we're looking for a house for them, and as soon as they find that rental, we can put their house on the market because they can move. That's step one. Get out of the house. Moving's hard. I understand that. Nobody wants to do it twice, but sometimes you're going to have move once and then move again. Or like you actually said in our conversation before, there was someone who was like, no, I'm just going to rent for the rest of my life. I'm not buying anything else. I'm going to rent a nice place that has, good amenities. It's going to be a condo, or it's going to be that. Or maybe I'm going to rent here for 3 years and then we're going to go down to Florida.
Or maybe I'm going to rent here and then get 3 months in Florida.
Yes. Like there are so many ways to look at it, but getting yourself, getting the burden of that big, expensive house off of your back is like the best thing that you can do. And it is your doorway to fun times. It is your doorway to freedom, just relaxing, just get a weight off of your shoulders, and kind of, it's so, again, that first conversation you and I had just really inspired me to get excited about what's my life going to look like at that point. Like I could do anything, I want, that's what I want for everybody, but you got to get the house off your back. Anyway, what were you going to say?
No, I mean that's exactly what I was going to say. And I also know, I don't know personally, but I know I have a contact. There are some creative ways of using reverse mortgages
Yes.
to downsize.
Yep.
And I just did a little workshop with a local guy out of Falmouth and Hyannis the other day, who I have, who can run numbers for people. And there's ways of reverse mortgaging either the new home you're going into or the one you're in to make that transition happen. So
Interesting. So yeah, reverse mortgage gets a bad rap, but I think it's actually a good
it's a
solution.
tool. It is a tool for some people. Yes.
Yeah, you got to know how to use it correctly. Okay. All right. So let's see. We talked about what happens. So we're talking about downsizing doesn't have to be a downer, like downsizing 101 and all the steps that you have to take. We talked about what happens when you don't downsize and kind of you run out of options. It's not on your terms anymore. You're being forced to do a thing, or your family or friends are being forced to do a thing because circumstances are dictating it rather than you. So that's the downside. The upside of downsizing is like freedom and fun.
Freedom, reduced expenses, so that possibly you'll have more income.
Yeah.
Maybe you can fund that long-term care plan. Maybe you can travel more.
And it's
And
also a gift to your family, like you
a
said.
huge gift. To me, that's the number one thing. It's a gift.
And you've lived it, so
I have lived it. I have endless stories. I'm probably going to write a book one of these days.
I would read that book. So if people are going to get serious about making their plan, I have made a plan. I am a woman of a certain age, so I have done that. So, but it needs to be, evaluated. But so the first step is to call an estate attorney. And if you need names, we have them. And we'll create a little resource sheet that will include, so you can access that. So you're going to call an estate attorney and get your plan set. And then you're going to partner with, one of the first things you need to talk about is about, downsizing. When is that going to happen? How are you going to downsize the house? What are you going to do with the money? Right. Jane can help you prep for that, help you get in a position where you're good financially. You've got the right insurances. You've got the right plans. You've moved your money into the right places. You've got contingencies. And what a feeling of calm. And know that you've got like all those scenarios covered. And then when it's time to actually do the sale and make the move, you'll start talking to me and I'll introduce you to a lender. What were you going to say?
I actually ask people to start talking to you right away, because I want them to know what their house it would get, what they're, what is it, assessment of value
for me to do. And people often hesitate to be like, oh, I don't want to bother you. You're so busy. I just need to know what my house is worth. I can do that in my sleep. I'm happy to do that. People can call me once a year. I'll give you the number. It changes all the time. Don't hesitate to do that. You need that in order to make a plan.
Yeah. And you don't want to put that off. Even if it's going to take you a little time to get all the house cleaned up and get everything in place, find out what it's worth right now, so you have a number to start with, because that could change one way or the other. Life can change.
Yeah. Everything changes.
At least get some ideas.
Yeah. I think you should be checking on the value of your house once a year, just to know what you're working with. Especially this year, things change so fast. Okay, so they've talked to you, they've talked to me, and they're getting ready to downsize. Remember, you've got a lot of options for how that can go. You don't have to be Daddy Warbucks to be able to do it. There's lots of different ways that money can be managed and moved to make it possible for you to get to a good, safe, happy place. And then once you have, after you've started this and once you've got it done, and just like you said with the clients that we share, you need to be getting after it, like every 3 to 5 years, still monitor, see where you're at, even after you've made the move, because things change.
That's life, right?
And you can make sure you're always doing them. And laws change,
laws change, taxes change, interest rates change.
Yeah, exactly.
Pandemics come on.
Right. Jane, is there anything else that you wanted people to know that we haven't talked about yet?
Not really. Just talk to your loved ones. I mean, whether you're looking to do it yourself or someone that you think should do it, have a gentle conversation with your loved ones about the topic. And, sometimes they won't want to talk about it, but stories always help. And there are lots of stories. And most people these days now know somebody that has done it or hasn't done it. So they're out there. And, just have those conversations. Don't be afraid to ask for help from your resources like us and many others out there. There are people that do this all day long. There's wonderful estate sale companies and, cleaners and, there's so many ways to do it without the angst if you just ask for help.
Yeah, especially here on the Cape. I mean, that's kind of our jam,
right. 100%.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Jane. If people want to find you, where should they go if they want to reach out?
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for doing this too. This has been a subject near and dear to both of our hearts. And it's just ironic that we decided, let's do this. Yeah. So my website, it's Coast to Coast Financial Planning. And we're based in Chatham. We have an office on Nantucket. And like you, I go to people's homes or their offices, their businesses, or, mutual place, to meet. So it doesn't have to be just in my Chatham office. Thank you for doing this, Katie. I really do appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. It turns out that downsizing is not a downer. If you just put in a little bit of time now, you can have a lot of time and a lot of money to enjoy later. If you want to know more about downsizing, especially now in this up market, come see me at thecapehouseteam.com. And if you want to hear more about selling or buying real estate here on Cape Cod, hit the subscribe button.